Hey everybody, episode 3 of the Hey Kerwin, coming to you live, pre-recorded from very overcast Perth. And we thought, hey, we've got 30 minutes to kill, let's do Hey Kerwin.
Salua Rifai says, hey Kerwin, how do you start a business while engaged in studies?
Great question. Salua, basically you just take the time that you've got outside of the studies and you apply that time to growing your business, which means there's got to be some sacrifice, you know. It means there's going to be a couple late nights. It means there's probably going to be a few less, drinking sessions with your college mates and a few less parties. But, that's a sacrifice. And, I guess the cool thing is where you are in your life right now. I'm assuming because you're studying young, I don't want to stereotype anyone who's in university or college, but the reality is this is the time for you to take risks. You know, you take risks while you're young because you've got plenty of time to recover. But my advice is just, grind in the hours after you study. And I think it's really also important to be focusing on something that you really enjoy. You know, I think oftentimes when people try and launch a business part-time, when it's in conflict with something else that's taking up a lot of their focus, if you don't do something that you're genuinely passionate about, you're going to struggle for the motivation that's required to, stay up late, get up early, and, perhaps make those sacrifices. Because if you're doing something that you don't really enjoy and you have to choose between, beer pong and beer bongs and doing the business, you're obviously, you're probably going to go where your values are most influential and most drawn to. So, make sure you love it. Beer bongs. I haven't heard that for so long.
Victor Trio asks, hey Kerwin, how do you come up with your content?
We essentially have two methods. Matthias and I work very closely together when it comes to creating the content. But we essentially do two things. And again, the language I'm going to use, I'm going to give credit to Gary Vee. He's obviously the pioneer in the content space, especially for personal brands. But we document and we create. Now, the difference between creating content and documenting content is creating content, I might do a piece of camera. Like what we're doing now, we're creating content. But documenting content is where I have Matthias follow me around into situations and scenarios that might be interesting, might not, and just capture the action as it happens, when it happens, which is really, for me, my preference. I've observed with the different types of content that we publish, there's a much stronger consumption or a much stronger appetite for the content that is documented because it's very real, it's very authentic versus the created content. Even when I'm doing a piece of camera, whether it be on productivity or health or, performance, there's always a little bit of, I don't know if it's showman or it's me basically presenting to camera. Whereas, and I'd like to think, I'm relatively authentic and I'm being who I am, which I try to be nothing else but when you're documenting, it's pure, like it's absolutely pure personality. It's pure intent. You get to see, people get to see you, as you really are. And if you've got that type of personality that is attractive to others, then that's going to be very intriguing. So for me, I have this document. I can show you this right here. It's called Ideas 365. And I created this document when we first started the social experiment, where I came up with 123 ideas. And whenever we want to, or whenever I see a theme in the marketplace, or whenever I see, a gap to make some content, we'll grab Matthias and I'll just go straight to camera. And, of those, whether it be a 45 to 2 minute videos where I'm doing to camera, most of them around 60 seconds, 120 seconds. It's really short, sharp, and very tight. And I think that's really important to remember. And this also goes for your documented content as well, not just your created content. It's got to be tight. We're living, in an attention-depleted society. I think it was back in 1992, the average consumer received 3,000 commercial messages a day. And I saw research recently that suggests it's up to about 32,000 commercial messages a day. So the content that you create is competing with, a very depleted attention span. The average attention span of a human being is actually 3 seconds now. And when you consider that an attention span of a goldfish is 7 seconds, it's a little bit worrying. So the content has to be sharp, it has to be concise, but it's got to be interesting to your market. But the word that I really like is snackable. Short, sharp, and snackable. However, to contradict myself, with the recent update to the Facebook algorithms, they're actually giving more weight to longer videos, and again, that's playing into Facebook's long-term strategy. They essentially want to become a distributor for broadcast, and they really want to start capturing people's attention spans for longer than 60 seconds on videos and 3 to 4 minutes on videos. But I like to look at what's going on, on Facebook and other platforms, and I like to see what the algorithms are doing, to see what Facebook is essentially trying to give preference to, and basically feed Facebook what it wants, but also taking into account the context of the market and what the market wants at the same time. I bleached my mug, for those of you who are wondering.
Louise Lacuna says, hey Kerwin, what is the best process you took on to overcome nervousness and being scared?
Great question. We were only just talking about, this morning how, in the past, I used to suffer from severe anxiety, and that severe anxiety would, manifest as nervousness. it also manifested as fear. You know, I'm a big fan of using experiences as a form of therapy to overcome, you know, specific challenges. I'm very experiential. You know, I'm tactile by nature. I like to do things and get in rather than just sit there and listen or read when it comes to, you know, assimilating and integrating information and knowledge. And I think knowledge and experience, there's a disconnect, and there's got to be that application to really embody it. So for me, I actually use skydiving as a way to overcome nervousness and fear. And to give you guys, everyone at home, like a complete perspective, I used to suffer severe anxiety, like debilitating anxiety that prevented me from speaking to people, opening my mouth, like even putting my hand up. You know, it was to the point where I literally thought there was something seriously wrong with me before I actually realized and, you know, was diagnosed with what it actually was. And rather than going down, you know, the suggested treatment path, which was, you know, essentially medication to dull it, you know, I used breathing exercises. And something that really helped me tremendously was heart math. And heart math is essentially the study of neurocardiology, the link between the heart and the brain and how these two communicate together. But more importantly, when they're in coherence, when the communication is clear, your heart actually expands. Like heart rate variability is essentially the key component that's required to connect the heart and the brain together. And heart rate variability is the measure of how much your heart opens and closes. And when you're nervous and you're tense and you're stressed, your heart actually doesn't fully open. And as a result, sometimes you feel you don't breathe properly. And when you've got, you know, you're short of breath and your heart's not opening properly, it actually amplifies, or it even in some cases triggers the anxiety, the nervousness, or the fear. And so I find using deep breathing exercises like 6-6-6, you know, in for 6, hold for 6, out for 6 is an incredibly fast way for me to hit the reset button and resolve the anxiety. And this is what's really interesting, and which relates to the conversation I was having with Matthias earlier today. You know, anxiety is one of those things, I don't think you can cure yourself from anxiety, because, you know, I was anxiety free for a number of years, but the last 2 weeks, you know, I've been had some stuff going on that has kind of triggered, you know, some mild anxiety to come up again. And what's interesting is it would have been very easy for me to go, oh no, I have anxiety again, or go, oh my God, where is this going? But the reality is I looked at it and went, wow, okay, I've obviously got some work to do. You know, the muscles for me, the muscles that I had learnt how to deal and cope with the regulation required to ease and dissipate the anxiety and the stress, obviously got a little bit weak. So I had some work to do, and yeah, I'm getting back into it. So for me, deep breathing, I'd certainly suggest exploring heart math. Neurocardiology is an incredible science. When you start to understand the connection between the heart and the brain, and when you start to, you know, assimilate and realize that the heart is sending more information to the brain than the brain is to the heart. You know, the heart has an enormous electromagnetic field, many times greater than the brain, has its own central nervous system. It has 100,000 times the charge of any other organ in the rest of the body. It plays an incredible role in intuition and the ability to receive information from the environment. The heart has a precognitive intuitive ability to tap into information in the environment when it's actually in coherence with the brain. But it also, as it beats, because it's got such a high electrical charge, like 100,000 times the electrical charge of any other organ in the body, it's the only organ in the body that has a sufficient electrical charge to be able to imprint, you know, solid amounts of information on the biophotonic energy as it's leaving the body that actually communicates with the rest of the environment. You know, there's actually a pithy, which is a saying in quantum mechanics, which is when you change the way you look at the world you look at changes. And quantum science and particle physics has actually shown us that when we look at things differently with a different perspective, matter actually starts to behave in different ways. And there's a lot of theories being bandied about of the role that the heart plays in that process and communicating with the environment. So yeah, bigger answer than perhaps you're looking for, but I hope it was interesting.
Caramel says...
It's a question, yeah. Her name's Caramel. Oh. It's caramel. Jeez, your mum had a good sense of humor.
Caramel says, hey Kerwin, what are the next steps after you've discovered what you love, think, read and talk about?
So obviously she's watched the purpose video where I talk about, you know, sharing how people can find their purpose. But once you've found it, it's, you know, it's kind of like up to you what you want to do with it. You know, some people just get pure joy from fulfilling their purpose and they don't need any commercial payoff as a result. They're happy to just, you know, live their purpose. And others like myself, you know, who really want to make a dent in the universe, like you know, I like to commercialize, and I'm this kind of weird mix. You know, my father was an economist, my mother was a clairvoyant and psychic, and so when you mix that together, you know, I've got this spiritual nature that is very commercial. And so for me, although as spiritual as I feel like I am when it comes to pursuing what I'm here to do, I'm also very interested in commercializing it to be able to do more things. Now, I want to create a distinction there. For me, the reason I'm so curious for commercialization of my purpose is not that I can have an abundance of money to go and spend it on shit. Like, look at the way that I dress. I've got more than enough money to buy a very expensive wardrobes and drive ridiculous cars and live in nice houses, but I don't. This shirt hasn't got a hole in it, so we're doing well. But for me, it's not about spending the money, it's about acquiring the money to do more, to be creating more impact. And one of the things that I've learned through my own journey is the more money that you have, the more tools that you have to create impact. There's no amount of poverty that you can acquire that will help you change the world. Those people who change the world are the ones that have access to capital to do things. Mother Teresa was renowned for her ability to raise capital. She was an incredible human being when it came to actually commercializing, the things that she was really passionate about, and not to make money for her, but to actually make money for the causes so that she could do more with the purpose that she had. So, how you commercialize that, that's a bigger question, but it's one that it starts by asking the question, how do I make money doing what I love? Am I talking very fast today, or is that just normal?
Rachel Michalski says, "Hey Kerwin, how do I support my 13-year-old starting her own business without feeling like I'm taking over?"
Just encourage her to explore. I believe that our job as parents is to be a guide, is to be, I think teacher is probably a little bit too authoritative based. I think as a guide, it's our responsibility to teach them things. It's not that we don't teach them things, but as a guide, we show them, and we help them learn how to make better decisions based on where they are. And as a 13-year-old, I know personally that's when I started, I think it was 13 or 14, is when I started my first business. I did it, I didn't have a parent telling me to do it, I just did it because I wanted to make money to go to the Townsville show. And me and my best mate Chris, we got together and we got entrepreneurial and sold shit and chocolates. So we did some cool stuff, but I would just encourage her to do something that she loves. And if she's interested in making money, I would certainly encourage her to do it in a way that is aligned with something that she loves. Is she into art? Okay, do some drawings, go around and try and sell it to the neighbors. Is she interested in cooking? Cook some stuff and, maybe sell it to the neighbors and the friends. It was interesting. I remember, this is going back a few years ago, about 7 years ago now, I had my neighbor from downstairs. Her daughters were going door to door in our street selling like raffle tickets for the school fete. And I bought like $200 worth of raffle tickets, and the girls were like, "Oh my God!" And they went running downstairs and they told their mum, and their mum come marching up the stairs with the $200 in her hand, and she went to give it back. And I was like, "Well, what's that all about?" She goes, "That's too much. You can't do that." And I was like, "Well, why can't I do that?" She goes, "Oh, it's just too much. It's just too much." I was like, "No," I said, "It's not too much." I said, "I actually want to use this as an opportunity to create a reference for what is possible when people get out of their comfort zones and learn the process of selling." Because these girls came over and they sold me, and I was so impressed. I gave them $200 worth of raffle tickets. I bought $200 worth of raffle tickets, and I wanted to use that as an opportunity to teach them and to guide them that when you do that, when you're able to get out of your comfort zone, when you're able to talk to people like that, there can be some great payoffs. So just be a guide, just be gentle, but certainly don't force her to do it, because otherwise, you know what happens when you try and force a 13-year-old to do the things that they want to do. They'll run 100 miles in the opposite direction. Good luck. Yeah, you got a 13-year-old, good luck.
Karina de Rishk says, "Hey Kerwin, what preparations do you suggest for someone who wants to start a business?"
I'm going to assume based on the context of the question that you haven't started yet. And I'll just say this. Imagine you are thinking about running a marathon. When do you think is the best time to start training? I think the worst thing you could do is wait till the gun goes off, although that's what most people end up doing. And hell, it's better to start training once the gun goes off than not at all. But my advice would be train in advance. Get in as much information and education as you possibly can. Go and seek mentors and people who have experience in business that can actually share with you some of the ways, some of the mistakes that they've made, but also some of the ways and the things that they've used to shortcut the process. The typical mistakes that people make as soon as they start making, first of all, they try to focus on making money. And if you're focusing on making money, it's going to screw you up. You want to be focusing on doing something you love, and the money should be a consequence of that. But you also want to be focusing on taking the money that you make and then reinvesting it, especially for the first 3 to 5 years, into growth. And that's where I see an enormous level of failure is created by people who take the money, especially in the startup phase, and as soon as they start making money, they start spending it straight away. And as a result, what do they have to do? They have to go out and start making more because they're spending what's in the bank. So for the first 3 to 5 years, you should only ever take money out of the business that is essentially enabling you to live and survive. So cost of living. And if you want to go on a holiday, go camping. You know, if you want to do something cool, do it at home. You know, there are so many amazing things that you can do when you get creative that don't really require a lot of money. And for the first 3 to 5 years, that's really important. And I know for me personally, that period was really important because if I had made a lot of money straight away, actually, when I made money, and this is really interesting, when I first made a lot of money straight away, and I wasn't prepared for it, oh my God, I was such a douchebag. You know, I'd spend the money on clothes, on cars, and I was just an idiot. And I had to lose money a couple of times before I really started to appreciate the importance of, you know, nurturing money and caring for money and putting it in a safe place and, you know, surrounding it with other forms of money just like it and encouraging it to grow. Because one of the things that I have seen, and I've seen this also, you know, in other companies, Apple's a great example. So Apple has over $200 billion in cash reserves. And, you know, for the longest period, I'm not sure if they still are today, they were the most valuable company on the planet. And I actually think that is an incredible example of when you have wealth and you take care of wealth, it attracts more. But I see this time and again where people start to build wealth and they start to have money and they literally spend it on stuff and they're left with no cash reserves. And when there's no cash reserves, for some reason, it doesn't necessarily have the same level of attraction. So I know for me, like I've been focusing very heavily for the last, especially for the last 6 years, on just building, you know, strong cash reserves. And I find the more money, cash that I have in the bank, the more that comes in and the more that comes in and the more that comes in. But here's the rub. It's not all about just squirreling money away and, you know, trying to protect it and not let anyone near it. It's about taking care of that money that's in your care and then deploying and then using and investing that money into areas that actually demonstrate a care for the business and demonstrate an intelligence around where that money is going. So you're not just spending it on shit, you're investing it in growth, you're investing in talent, in resources and, you know, infrastructure, in some cases, you know, assets and property that support the growth of the business versus, you know, cars and planes and holidays and that kind of shit. And I'm not saying you can't once you get there, but I'm saying there's a timing for everything. And to round off, what's interesting is when you learn how to take care of money, by the time the real money starts to come in, you actually are really sensible. You know how to take care of it. You know how to look after it. And that's why I think the first 3 to 5 years, you need to learn how to become lean. You need to learn how to become frugal because, you know, making money actually becomes quite easy once you know how to make money. But then the real trick is knowing how to keep it. Last time we did episode 2, the question of the day was, should I or should I not shave? But crazy me, I actually shaved it. And as soon as I shaved it, I felt naked. I literally felt naked. And I went, wow, I really do have a fat face. So I'm bringing back the beard. For those of you who don't like it, sorry. Fears. I've been talking a lot about fears the last week. I'm curious to know, what are your top 3 fears in life? Just give me 1 to 3. What are your top 1 to 3 fears that you have that literally feel like that paralyze you and prevent you from getting after it? Don't forget, for those of you who have any questions that you want me to answer, make sure you put the hashtag #HeyKerwin below and ask me any question that you want. I am an open book. See you next time.